This is a code walkthrough for the example file SplitSimple2.java. What we're demonstrating in this file is splitting up a string using the split method into an array of strings, then performing some data conversions so that we can do computations with the elements of that array. So as always, let's start by compiling this file. We'll set a breakpoint on main, and let's start single-stepping through this with the debugger and talk our way through this. Here's a string format to represent a money quantity, and let's say we want to have a leading dollar sign in 2 decimal places. We'll use that down here when we print our results. And let's say we start with this string here. It looks like this represents the name of some item, an inventory quantity, and a unit price for that item. We don't really know where this came from. Maybe it was entered in from the user, maybe it came from a file read or a database query. But what we want to do is we want to split this up into individual pieces. So in one step, we can parse this into an array of strings like so. So these are all individual strings, including these number-looking things. But if we want to do any computation with this, we've got to convert these. But before we can convert them, we need to remove these leading white spaces. Otherwise, we'll get exception errors if we try to convert these. So in this loop here, we're going to go through this and apply the trim method to each of the individual strings, then write this result back over itself in this original array. So again, this is a string. One of the things we can do with a string is trim it. So this is a trimmed string, and we'll just write it back over itself in the array. So we'll loop through this. There's not going to be any change to this first element. But notice that this 30 is going to be changed, and it's going to take away that leading white space. And the same thing with the 299. It's going to take off the leading white space. Now these are all still strings. So what we need to do now is take this array apart and break these into individual elements and type convert them as needed. So we'll take the element data sub 0 and we'll write it into its own string called item, which now exists. Then we'll take the data sub 1 element, which is a string 30. We'll run it through the parse int method of the integer wrapper class, and we will break that out. So now this string 30 is now an integer 30 in its own variable. And we'll do the same thing with the data sub 2 element. We'll run that through the parse double method of the double wrapper class and assign it to its own variable price. So now we've got 2 numerical variables that we can do computation with. So finally, in this last step, we're going to compute the value of the inventory as price times inventory, and we're going to apply this money format to it so that it comes out with a leading dollar sign in 2 decimal places, and we're simply going to print out the item and the value of the inventory, and that will give us this result down here, and we are done with this program. Okay, so the key thing here is that when we split up a string using the split method, we may also have to individually convert the individual elements of the array using various parse methods as we see here. The only trick here is to keep track of what's what and apply the right parse method to the right data element and then assign them to their own individual scalar variables. Nothing tricky there. Okay, that's it for this example.